Hey there everyone, welcome to Infinite Realms. Today I'm going to take a quickie look at Star Wars Vintage Collection Book of Boba Fett Tusken Warrior. Now, I think if you watch my channel at this point, you know I'm kind of all over the place with my collection. And you know, a lot of collectors focus on one scale or one thing or in that. You know, Star Wars I always do prefer in this vintage collection scale because one, the vehicles are easier to deal with. Two, you can get a lot more figures. Now, for whatever reason, Hasbro doesn't want to concentrate on this, and so there we are. And you know, I have a hard time with that because you know, I got some Black Series, but you know, to me, Black Series just doesn't cut it. Vintage Collection cuts it. And this is an interesting figure. I like it. I wasn't, you know, the Book of Boba Fett, initially I thought it was okay, but then as the more it wore on me, I was more like, yeah, it was kind of weak in a lot of places. One thing I did like was the look of the Tuskens. That was cool. So I went with that. And when this was announced, I was like, oh, this might be okay. Now, they're charging some ridiculous prices on the one with the Mastiff, but this one, I mean, is normal price. I mean, I don't like the prices, but, you know, still. And we got the cross-sell on the back, of course. Really only interested in Hunter here because, you know, I like the Bad Batch. I want to get the Bad Batch. I wish they just released them in vintage scale so we could have them. But so far they only released Hunter, so yeah, that's fun. Thanks, Hasbro. Thanks so much. Hasbro doesn't care about vintage. I mean, that's the truth of the matter. There's plenty of vintage fans out there, though. And that's kind of the befuddling thing about it, especially when they're screwing up Black Series so bad. But, yeah, I'm going to get them out of the box, and I'll talk about them a little more once we do that. Alright, and there is the Tusken Warrior out of the box. You know, it's kind of interesting, too, because I know I've had this conversation with Chad, if it's Chad, and a couple other people. And, you know, one thing Chad always says is, and I agree with him, is that, you know, some people say, oh, well, 6-inch you can get more detail. And I'm like, I don't think so. Maybe at one time you could, but now, no. And just kind of look at this sash here. I mean, that is really detailed really, really well. I mean, that is pretty darn good for Hasbro, especially, who seem to be lazy about details. So, I mean, yeah, come on. I mean, again, I just prefer vintage because I've been at this for a long, long time. My original Star Wars figures were vintage scaled figures. It's really hard for me to, you know, abandon that scale after 40 plus years. I mean, this is what I prefer. I just prefer Star Wars figures to be small, as I prefer my G.I. Joe figures to be small. That doesn't mean I won't ever collect any of the larger scale. It's just that's not the thing that interests me the most. This is what interests me the most. I will be interested in seeing reviews on this guy when the Black Series one comes out, and just see if there is any more detail. I don't think there will be, to be perfectly honest. I mean, that's going to be pretty interesting. You have a one-to-one comparison here. Let me see. Does this come off? It looks like it should. But no, this headdress does not come off, that I can tell. I'm glad it doesn't, because that'll get lost. The gaffy stick is a little thinner. The figure's a little thinner than I expected it to be. When, you know, I didn't take a very close look at the press images. And it's very thin. I was not expecting that. Then, you know, I get to looking at the box art, and yeah, I suppose, really, the actor in question is kind of thin, too, so, yeah, I mean, that isn't out of bounds or anything. So, you know, I get it. I mean, again, Book of Boba Fett, you know, it wasn't everybody's cup of tea, but I did like the variation on the Tusken Raiders. I thought that was pretty cool. I wanted at least one of the variants. I know they're doing others, but you know, I'll just grab the one and be happy with that, because again, the prices are getting way too steep on these, and that's keeping me a little bit out of the game on them. I mean, I still love vintage collection. It is my first love. You know, Black Series is okay, but you know, I don't want to collect long term on that and huge amounts on that. I've got some favorites I've gotten. I've got some reviews lined up of some of my favorites I managed to find fairly easily and cheaply. I was really surprised, actually. And, you know, again, it's really weird how that goes. But, again, when I'm talking about vintage collection, I mean, there's something magical about it. I mean, it's just right. I wish Hasbro would quit overcharging on the vehicles, and I do feel they're way overcharging on vehicles, especially vehicles they're redoing. Slave 1 comes to mind. I mean, that is just a massively overinflated amounts for the vehicles. I mean, they're just crazy right now, and I can't get behind that either. I've not even taken a look at the vehicles. I mean, I've got vehicles in vintage scale that I love. I mean, I absolutely love, and I'm gonna keep hanging on to those. And there's a few I need to get, and I will get them eventually. But you know, still, I'm not abandoning, you know, vintage collection, but it's few and far between. I freely admit. Let me see how easily is, you know, knee articulation works good. Yeah, of course. Hip articulation is struggling a little bit. You know, you have those problems with any new vintage figure. And again, I just, and black, you know, another thing about Black Series, I just don't have the room. I mean, if I've collected all the Black Series figures that I want, I would not have room in my house. It's being proven to me by my Marvel Legends collection, which I reluctantly started collecting again, and now I'm kind of back to cherry picking. But at the same time, you know, I mean, I think this is a good addition. It's different. It's odd. I mean, you know, there's a lot of potential for it to, you know, it doesn't have to be limited to the Book of Boba Fett. It can be somewhere else. I mean, Tusken Raiders pop up everywhere. So, you know, I did like to see some variation on the Tusken Raiders. I think they are, you know, I've always liked the Tusken Raiders. And I do really like the idea of them having different outfits for different tribes. I think that works for me. So, you know, there's a lot of reasons to grab this one. He's not going to be an exclusive Book to Boba Fett. I'll have him hanging out with my other Tusken Raiders. But at the same time, you know, I can see people avoiding this because it's Book of Boba Fett. To me, I can take the figure, even though it was very prominent in the series, and take it out of the series and put it into my collection in another way. That still works. And that's the beauty of collecting, right there. You know? You can do that with something you just like. So, as I said, I like it. I'll give it probably 4 stars. It's pretty cool. My one gripe might be, let me see, does this, okay. So there's a split right here that lets the shoulder come up. So, the shoulder isn't totally hindered. It is a little bit up and down, but that's alright. Again, Tusken Raider, man, what are you going to do? But, you know, I like it a lot. I like the details on it. It's pretty unique in its presentation. And, well, that's my thoughts right there. Alright. Well, I guess I'm going to wrap this up for Infinite Realms. Don't forget to like and subscribe.